Progressive politicians love to talk about raising the minimum wage. It makes them sound caring, compassionate, concerned. They're on the side of the worker, standing against the greedy employer. The current call is for a national $15 an hour minimum wage, more than double the current federal rate of $7.25. A number of cities and states are already there, including New York, California, Washington, D.C., and Seattle. Others are considering it. The left casts the minimum wage debate as a war between employee and employer, but most business owners pay their workers as much as they can. Finding and keeping good people is the hardest part of any employer's job. I know. For 17 years, I ran CKE Restaurants, the parent company of Carl's Jr. and Hardee's. Our company and franchise restaurants employed over 75,000 people. But as with most retail businesses, our profit margins were razor thin. Based on my experience, if we adopt the national minimum wage of $15, here's what will happen. 1. A lot of people will lose their jobs or have their hours reduced. According to a 2014 Congressional Budget Office study, just a $10 minimum wage would cost 500,000 jobs as businesses terminate employees. Obviously, far more jobs would be lost at $15 an hour. To survive, employers would have to reduce hours, even for workers who manage to keep their jobs. That's a pay cut. 2, businesses will close, and the jobs they created will disappear. A recent report from researchers at the Harvard Business School found that each $1 increase in the minimum wage results in a 4 to 10% increase in the likelihood of restaurants closing. An over $7 an hour increase to $15 would be devastating, not only for restaurants, but for small businesses and their employees. 3, young people will lose that entry-level job opportunity. My first job was scooping ice cream at a Baskin-Robbins in Cleveland, Ohio in the 1960s. Now, it paid just $1 an hour, but it taught me valuable lessons like the importance of showing up on time, teamwork, and presenting a happy demeanor to customers. No one can get that better job until they have their first job. 4, the cost of all workers will have to go up. If you hire a dishwasher at $15 an hour, your cooks will be unhappy with their wages. You're going to have to pay everybody more, which increases labor costs across the board. That's more pressure on profits. Too much pressure and you're out of business. 5, fewer people will open businesses. $15 an hour is a very steep hill to climb. Would-be entrepreneurs will do the math on labor costs and realize it's just not worth the risk. This is a real cost to the economy that we can't measure. A company that never exists never employs anyone. 6, prices for everything will go up as businesses pass higher labor costs along to consumers. One of 2 things will happen. Either consumers won't pay the higher prices and businesses will lay off workers or close, or consumers will pay higher prices and have less money to spend elsewhere. Either way, the higher minimum wage will represent a drag on the overall economy. Now, this may sound like doom and gloom, but it's already a reality for many business owners and workers in the cities and states that are raising the minimum wage. In San Francisco, AQ, a 2012 James Beard Award finalist for the best new restaurant in America, saw rising labor costs drive its profit margins down from 8.5% in 2012 to 1.5% by 2015. So it shut the doors. Jeremy Marin's chain of Cuban restaurants in New York closed 2 locations because of minimum wage increases and has raised prices at the restaurants he's still operating. The minimum wage, he said, is going up too fast. We can't catch our breath. Kevin McNamee is a chiropractor in California. I'll be moving my 2 companies out of Los Angeles, he wrote in a letter to the New York Times. When the city compels me to pay employees $15 an hour, it comes out of my pocket. Last year, my employees made more than I did. Now, these stories are already all too common. Expect them to become more so as cities and states pile on the $15 minimum wage bandwagon. So, if a $15 minimum wage doesn't help workers and doesn't help employers, who exactly does it help? Well, maybe just the progressive politicians who manage to mislead voters into believing that it's the right thing to do. Sounding caring, compassionate, and concerned is all well and good, but having a job is better. I'm Andy Puzder for Prager University.
What's up, guys? Aldo here with PragerU. Today I'm back on Hollywood Boulevard to ask people about minimum wage and how high they think it should be. Let's go. What should the minimum wage be?
Man, if we being honest, I'm gonna say at least 16, 17. 15 ain't gonna cut it.
I'm thinking like 20 and up.
$18 an hour, I think.
$20.
Why 20?
Well, it's fair. You can make a living.
$20, 21 an hour.
What about $30 an hour?
Oh, I'd love that.
What about $40 an hour?
That'd be even better.
How about $100 an hour?
Sign me the up.
How about 100?
At 100 too. Yeah, I see you keep going up. I'm agree every time.
How about 200?
Yeah, why not? I mean, the sky's the limit. But
Sky's the limit, just keep raising it up.
I think there is money for everybody.
We'll take $1,000 an hour. That'd be great.
Fast food workers in California are on track to make a minimum wage of $20 by next April. What do you think about that?
Hey, power to them.
No, I think that's actually good because with the economy, everything's just going up in price. So I think that's a step forward in the right direction.
It can be a big difference, but I don't think it's enough.
To me, every single McDonald's that I've been to, they don't rate $20 an hour.
For a fast food worker, 20 an hour is fine.
Would you be in favor of $30 an hour?
I think you're reaching now.
Do you think raising the minimum wage too high would incentivize employers to automate or to cut employees or to cut down on hours?
They can, yeah.
Oh yeah, I can see that happening. That's happened to me before where raise gets higher, so they have to pay their workers more, so you get less hours. That's just how it works. The corporate's greedy.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you can already see that now. I see little robots now, so they're taking money out of people's pocket because now Uber deliveries, you know what I mean? It's cutting back those drivers.
If we want to help those people, why not let the market decide their value where they can go to the place that's paying them best instead of forcing an employer to make the decision between automating and cutting employees?
Yeah. I agree. It's a really good point.
Who do you think takes more risk in a business, the employee or the business owner?
Oh, both. Both of them take equal risk. Both of them have the ability to lose in the situation.
Listen, me, I've owned my business for 28 years. Definitely the business owner takes more of the risk.
Employee.
Who has more risk in the business, the employee or the business owner?
The business owner.
So why should the government be telling the business owner how much they should pay their employees?
He shouldn't. That's their establishment. They pay money for their establishment. They paying the bills on their establishment.
Right.
It all depends on the corporation, on the business owner. There shouldn't be no regulation as far as how much you get paid.
I'm still for it, for the $20 an hour minimum wage. I'm a man of the people, and I believe if you're a hard worker, you deserve that.
But when you have a minimum wage, you're giving $20 an hour to people that might not deserve it, and the same amount to the people that do deserve it.
That's 100% true.
I don't think it's an easy question to answer because as the wages go up, then the cost of the goods and services are going to go up accordingly.
So if you owned a McDonald's and they said you got to pay all your employees $20, even that lazy guy that barely mops the floors, what would
He
you?
getting fired. He going. If I got to do that, I agree with that. But the ones that don't work hard, they getting fired. I'm
So
sorry.
do you see the problem now with raising the minimum wage?
Yeah, I see it now. I see what you're saying. I had to think about it in my own perspective as if I had a business or not.
That's it for this one, you guys. Let me know what you think about it down in the comments below. How high do you think minimum wage should be? If you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more content like this. As always, be sure to follow me and PragerU across all social medias. And to stay up to date with everything that we're doing here at PragerU, make sure to go to the App Store and download the PragerU app. I'll see you guys in the next one. You guys, I think I found it. $20 minimum wage in action. Come here. This is it. The result of raising the minimum wage. How much do you make an hour?
The right minimum wage, $0.00. That was the headline of an editorial in one of America's most prestigious newspapers. Can you guess which one? The Wall Street Journal, perhaps. Right city, wrong paper. This editorial appeared in the New York Times in 1987. There's a virtual consensus among economists, the Times wrote, that the minimum wage is an idea whose time has passed. So economists in the liberal paper were on the same page, pun intended. Why? Because they understood that a minimum wage does not guarantee jobs. It guarantees only that those who get jobs will be paid at least that minimum. And that leads to two bad outcomes: unemployment and higher prices. I can best explain this by asking a simple question. What is a wage? A wage is the price of labor. Now, what happens if the price of labor rises not because workers have become more productive, not because a business must pay higher wages to hold on to valuable employees, but only because the government requires it? When the minimum wage rises, employers will adjust. They will use less labor. They'll fire current employees or cut back on their hours. They will also raise prices for their goods or services. These are undesirable consequences. But let's also consider another bad effect. Businesses will hire fewer workers, especially those with little or no job experience. Suppose you're young and haven't worked many jobs before. Maybe you've never had a job and are trying to land your first one. The work you can offer an employer may be worth only, say, $7 an hour. You agree? Yes. He agrees? Yes. And you have your first job. But what if the minimum wage set by the government is higher than $7? What if it's $10 or more? Well, you won't get the job. You may be willing to work for $7 an hour, but under minimum wage laws, it would be illegal for you to do so. This very point was made by Paul Samuelson, one of the leading economists of the 20th century and a prominent liberal. I paraphrase from his classic textbook, Economics. What good does it do a black youth to know that an employer must pay him a minimum wage if the fact that he must be paid that wage keeps him from getting a job? And that young person loses more than a paycheck. He also loses valuable work experience, learning to accept responsibility, dealing with a boss, getting along with coworkers, all the things that demonstrate to an employer that he made the right choice in hiring, and all the things that will help that young person get a better paying job down the road. Yes! A recent study found that in some cities, the unemployment rate for teens without a high school diploma approached 50%. Pricing these teens out of the labor market does them no favors. It's not doing the rest of society any favors either. Teenagers who can't find jobs often find trouble. Advocates of a higher minimum wage argue that while some young people might be priced out of the job market, this is outweighed by the fact that those who have minimum wage jobs will get a wage increase. But that doesn't mean they'd be better off. It's true that the government can force business owners to pay its minimum wage workers more per hour, but it can't force these business owners to pay them more per week. According to the Los Angeles Times, after Connecticut raised its minimum wage to $10.10 an hour, a 20-year-old woman who worked at a donut shop in Hartford was soon disappointed when her hours were cut from 35 per week to 27. Employers will look for other ways to cut costs. The Economic Policy Institute, a union-funded organization that pushes for higher minimum wages, admits this. Employers, they write on their website, may be able to absorb some of the costs of a wage increase through higher productivity, lower recruiting and training costs, decreased absenteeism, and increased worker morale. How would an employer get higher productivity? By working the employees harder. How would an employer cut training costs? By training them less. So let's summarize. Raising the minimum wage makes it harder for young and inexperienced workers to get jobs, to get on that crucial first rung of the employment ladder. And many of those who do benefit from a wage increase will likely find those benefits undone. They will work fewer hours, will work harder per hour, and will get less training. Sounds like the New York Times had it right back in 1987. I'm David Henderson, the editor of the Concise Encyclopedia of Economics for Prager University.
What's up, guys? This is Will Witt from PragerU. Today we are at UCLA, beautiful campus here, talking to students about the minimum wage and whether it's a good idea or not. How high do you think the minimum wage should be?
Well, definitely a lot higher than what it is right now.
I mean, I'd probably say the highest is maybe 20, absolute highest.
How high should the minimum wage in California be?
That's a good question. Maybe like $25. I mean, that's pretty high, no?
Yeah. Oh, I was thinking more like 35.
35? I would agree with that.
What about 45?
Where do you draw the line? That's the question, huh? I'd go with 45 too. I'd agree with that.
I mean, I come from New Jersey. The minimum wage was like $8.37. Then waitress minimum wage is $2.30. So it's a lot lower and it sucks. So I definitely think higher minimum wage is good.
How high should the minimum wage be?
Man, I think, these people work hard in the United States. I think they need to get, everything $15 up. If they're working at McDonald's, Rod A's, anything, make it $15 up. You know what I'm saying? They paying taxes anyway.
What about $20 up?
You know what? I think so.
25.
You know what? I said 25 because these people get up every day, taking chances too.
What number would you say to raise the minimum wage to?
I think like maybe 17.25, something like that.
What about 30?
30 sounds good, you know?
I mean, I worked at a job, when they raised it to 11, at my old job, they cut everyone's hours. Like,
Then why are you saying we should raise the minimum wage then? That doesn't sound like a good idea at all.
I don't know.
If they're paying people a lot more for wages, they'd have to then fire people to keep their profits the same.
I don't think so. That's
Because then they'd be paying people a lot more and not making as much money.
That's just nothing but excuses.
If I were to say that the data shows that raising the minimum wage actually raises prices and lowers, makes the economy worse, would that change your mind at all?
Of course, definitely.
Have you seen what happened in Seattle?
No.
Raised the minimum wage there to $15 an hour, and it didn't go so well. Do you think everyone should get paid the same, even if they're not good workers? Like you and you're really good at your job and I'm not, and then we both get paid the same minimum wage. Is that fair?
Well, I think on like a moral level, it's not fair for that person to be slacking off. But I think that there should still be the same base for everybody because that's just what the job is.
Do you think if you're a really good employee and I suck as an employee, we should both get the same minimum wage, both working the same job, but you work it well and I don't? Is that fair?
No, I mean, I guess that's not fair. But yeah, I mean, I think that also, if I'm working better, then I should be able to get a better position at what I'm doing. But yeah, if we're doing the same shit and you're getting paid the same amount, then that seems kind of silly, especially for the business, because they're wasting their own resources on you, who is just losing them money.
And that's what a minimum wage is.
Yeah, okay.
Like the fair-minded progressive that I was, I thought a $15 minimum wage was an absolute good. Then I had a head-on collision with reality. It's a funny thing about reality. It just is. You can't wish it away. So here is my cautionary tale. For over 3 decades, I had a good job working as a server. I have worked in some amazing award-winning restaurants in Seattle. I enjoyed the work, met wonderful people, and I was making really good money. I wasn't making much per hour, that's true, but in my business, the magic is in tips. On a typical night, I would make on average $25 to $50 an hour. Believe me, I earned it. I took pride in my work. I wanted every dining experience to be a memorable one for my guests. I also loved my job for this reason. I had flexibility. I could plan my work schedule. That was very important to me because I had a growing son. It was a good life. Then, in 2015, the Seattle City Council raised the minimum wage from $9.47 to $15 an hour, a 58% hike. Great for the working stiff, right? Well, hang on, because here comes Mr. Reality. The business owner, the person who signs the checks, has to find a way to pay for this massive new expense. For Walmart or Microsoft or a large restaurant chain, this might not be a problem. For a local restaurant owner, it's a nightmare. Contrary to popular opinion, most restaurants don't have big profit margins. In fact, most are razor thin. Seattle restaurant owners, faced with this shock to their bottom line, raised prices, reworked their menus, and created new compensation models. Some did away with tips altogether, substituting a flat service charge as a way of navigating the climbing wage. That change in the tipping model caused a dent in my pocketbook. The rise in the wage did not cover the loss of tips. And, of course, they cut back on employee hours and support staff too. But for many establishments, none of these cost-saving measures worked. Restaurants, some that had been in business for decades, many family-owned, closed, including the ones I worked for. Good servers don't grow on trees, and I was able to score an interview at another amazing restaurant. Then, before I could even confirm the interview, that one closed too. Same reason. The $15 minimum wage cut their profits down to nothing. So let me add this up for you. I make a lot less money now than I did before Seattle decided to do what was supposedly in my best interest. I used to be able to pay my bills as they came due. Now it's a juggling act. I used to have enough money to support my son's extracurricular activities. Now I often just say no. Before the minimum wage increase, I had one job and worked 4 days a week. After the wage hike, I had 2 jobs and worked 6. With my skills and a tipping culture, I used to average 18 to 20% or more on any check. Now, instead of tips, I get a flat 14%, part of the 20% service charge the restaurant owner tacks on the bill. I still pride myself in providing good service, but the incentive to go the extra mile is gone. There is no way to maximize my income. And what's Seattle's answer to my problem? To raise the minimum wage again. The progressive idea is that you should be able to make a fair wage. But if you have no job or are working more for less, how is that fair? How is it fair to my friend who worked his way up from busboy to sommelier, the fancy name for the person who manages a restaurant's wine list? He lost his job when his restaurant closed due to the minimum wage increase. Or my former boss, who went from a cook to an owner and couldn't survive the double blow of the minimum wage law and the coronavirus. And it's not just a Seattle problem. In New York City, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour pushed the restaurant industry into a recession. To stay afloat, 75% of owners reduced employee hours and 47% eliminated jobs. San Francisco is in the same boat. Mandating minimum wage laws might be a winner for progressive politicians and ivory tower economists, but it's a loser for those of us who have to live with the consequences. Unless fair-minded people speak out, those consequences only figure to get worse as more states, and maybe even the federal government, succumb to the false promise of raising the minimum wage. I'm Simone Barron with the Full Service Workers Alliance for Prager University.